Hi, this is Evan Ferch with the SimmonsReview.com. As we've been doing the past couple weeks, Dr. Simmons and I are going to do a bit of a in-depth weekly recap of the top news stories of the week, what's going on, digging a little bit deeper than your average newscast does. So let's start. A lot of things to talk about. I want to start with Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Moscow to sit down with Putin over the Russian troop movements in Syria, talking about the Golan Heights, the fight against ISIS, things like that. So why don't you open up with that? Give us a little background.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch the primary actors. Everybody focuses on the major three. The PRC, the United States, and of course Russian Federation. But if you look at the regional actors, they may be the deciding factors in this equation that's evolving. And I think the fact that Netanyahu was consulted like a head of state kind of helped him restore a little bit of his lost position in the area, because he's been taken to task and denigrated to a certain degree by the Obama administration, who have not given Israel the preferential treatment they're used to. And also there's some funding issues, and so it's getting complicated. So the head of state, now you got to remember, Vladimir Putin wants to be the man. He wants to be the most dominant figure in international relations today, and you can make a fairly strong argument that at least right now he is. So if he continues that objective, he solicits something from a former adversary, but the relationship has changed. The tank battles in the Golan Heights and the Syrian Arab-Israeli triangle has pretty much changed. And so he has the foresight, I think, both Netanyahu and Putin have the foresight to say, hey, this is our neighborhood. We have a long track of relations. We have plenty to talk about without the Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see this as, we've been seeing, it's been talked about in The Economist recently, sort of an Eastern pivot by the Israelis, not only with the Russians, but with the Chinese. A lot of Chinese investment interests going into Israel right now, developments in Tel Aviv, things like that. It's not a secret that relations between Netanyahu and the Obama administration aren't exactly rosy, or they haven't been for the past few years, especially. Do you see, is the Eastern pivot an assumption? Is it people sort of going too far with this?
Well, the old axiom applies here: where you sit determines where you stand, and where you stand determines where you sit. I think the old relationships are in flux. There is no standard protocol anymore. I'm not going to talk to Netanyahu before I talk to somebody else. And those things are out the window. I think I had an interesting consider this episode with an IPAC lawyer here in town who actually said to me, he said, there's daylight where there never has been daylight between the two major actors. And so if you go on the assumption that that will only widen and increase, the map of Europe is being redrawn, but more than that, the larger map is being withdrawn. The prominent actors are changing. The PRC is coming right to the front. Everything is more or less, there's an atmosphere of you have to have their at least tacit approval to get anything done. The money's in Beijing. There's $4 trillion backed up there, as we learned last week from Liz Verkamp. And so I think that is a key variable. They're calling the tune in a lot of ways. And actually, Putin is now a client of the Xi administration rather than the other way around, which changes the whole set of dynamics.
How do the Iranians factor into this? Because, you see, I guess if you look at the perhaps just under open source relationship between Israel and the Iranians, there's been people walking away from various tables in various places on various issues for decades. Between the Islamic Revolutionary Government in Tehran and the Israelis. With the Israelis sort of not buddying up with the Russians, but at least becoming on proper terms, when the Russians have such a good relationship with the Iranians now, does that show a possible, at least consideration of a thawing between Tehran and Tel Aviv?
I think it does, and actually it's a practical matter. It's not ideological anymore. And I think everybody's moving away from the ideological arguments, and they realize that everybody is doing the same thing. They want their geopolitical piece of the pie, and they're going to make sure they get it. Now, if that means that you gotta sleep with Iran for a while, or sleep with Putin for a while, or you have to warm up to somebody that you're not used to warming up with, they seem to be willing to do it, and that's new. That's the new variable.
Yeah. Especially with the Israelis. I mean, Middle Eastern politics, in a way, that's sort of 101. I mean, you buddy up with who you have to, and you turn your back. Exactly. There's no serious,
It's not like traditional relations like we're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. The other part of this issue is, if we can switch a little bit and focus on the war against ISIS, we've seen Syrian pilots starting to fly Russian aircraft on bombing missions against ISIS. So the Russians are getting into the fight. We know that for sure now.
Well, the Russian story I'm following very closely because the logistics, the kinetic warfare possibilities are strong. Mm-hmm. If there's going to be a confliction, right now there's a deconfliction effort going on to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah. The point being that anything can go wrong, and when it probably can, it might, and or will, as the old axiom goes. So I think they're trying to be careful. On the other hand, there's no mistaking that Syria has been a Russian client state since the 60s. Yeah. I mean, they were part of the Cold War legacy and the Holmes Military Academy, some things we touched on last week. But I think definitely Putin has a vision, and he's not going to be deterred. And I think the co-actors here, mm-hmm. the more regional actors, are looking at and say, we can ride this and get a lot of mileage out of this because he's standing down the United States. Yeah. He's created a 10 to 15 degree window of opportunity that didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. So let's ride it and see what we can get out of it.
Yeah. Now, I guess my question, I've thought this for a couple of years. Is it the Obama administration sort of leading from behind philosophy in the Middle East that is sort of opening this space, if you will, both diplomatically and militarily, sort of creating a bit of a vacuum that we didn't see in previous administrations because especially the second Bush administration was so hands-on. Yeah. And so we want to control everything in here. And the Obama administration seems to be backing off a little bit. So I guess my question is that necessarily a decline of quote-unquote American imperial power in the Middle East?
Well, as you know, I've written quite a bit about that subject, the paradox of American power is the last thing I wrote on this subject. I think it's basically, and it's a lot to do with how you read Obama. Mm-hmm. Obama's a diplomat first, but he's also a covert hitter. Yeah. I mean, he's the one that killed bin Laden. He's the one that's controlling the Special Operations Forces, JSOC, the drones, all of it. So he is lethal, but he's covert lethal. He doesn't make a lot of declarations about what he does. But his venue is open diplomacy. Let's go diplomacy first. Now, he's going to hand off the mantle to Hillary Clinton or whoever, probably Hillary Clinton soon. So her answer to diplomacy is smart power. Mm-hmm. And she's much more militant than him.
She's quite a bit more hawkish than him.
Very much more hawkish. She's the one that made the brash statement when they were running against each other in the primaries that she would nuke a country. Mm-hmm. And she got a lot of immediate attention from the right there. Oh, maybe we will elect you. You sound like one of us. So, there's some daylight between them, between those two. I think basically you're looking at opportunities that did not exist before. And the venue's changing, the power centers are changing. America's no longer calling the entire tune. Yeah. They still have a heavy voice, not to be sure. They are the dominant military actor. They are the hegemonic power still today, in absolute terms. But diplomatically and financially, they're struggling to keep up with the Chinese. Yeah. And Putin is there all the time. Every time they try to make a boost, like a basketball player, every time they try to take a shot, there's a guy in his face. Yeah. And it's Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin, yeah. I mean, I see, and tell me what you think about this. I think as we're moving past, sort of, if you will, the American imperium and being the sole, hegemon on the planet, in my view, the Middle East right now, because it's so, you could say, especially rife. The Middle East is always rife with conflict, but it's been especially bad in the past 10 years. That right now, this is sort of a playground, in a sense, that all the sort of emerging world powers, not only the Russians and the Chinese, but also India, Pakistan, they're sort of coming in, and the EU to a certain extent, sort of testing the waters. to what extent can we play our hand? Can we play a bigger hand than we used to against the Americans, against the American hegemon in the world?
Well, they're not risk averse anymore.
Yeah.
They want to take the shot. They want to say, let's see what happens. Let's see if Uncle Sam will push back the way he usually does. The immediate reaction was always military and immediate, and that seems to be lacking, and that's the leading from behind scenario.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on how you look at it. It could be leading from behind, but it's more a kind of a new assessment of realism. What is going on in the world out there today? That's my estimation.
Sort of the changing of what real politic means.
The way things are lining up are not the way they used to line up.
Yeah.
That's I'm sorry. The key variable, or I think they're actually beginning to realize that we are moving to multipolarity away from hegemonic power.
And quickly. And it seems to be accelerating much more. Yeah. Let's move on to, let's revisit, if we will, the migrant crisis still going on. If you could, just maybe briefly for our viewers and myself, sort of bring us up to speed on developments with the Europeans, especially Germany.
Well, it's an act in progress. It's a play. It's a drama. It's a Shakespearean drama, if nothing else. Angela Merkel comes out with daily quota raises, and she says, "Oh yeah, we're going to admit 800,000 people," and her security forces are screaming, "Slow down!" Yeah. And then the next day she says, "And then after that, we're going to admit," So that number keeps going up. But what she's doing is she's pressuring the Americans and the other Commonwealth, the EU Commonwealth, de facto, to say, okay, we'll ante in, because the European Union has got one criticism consistently. They talk about pitching in, and then they don't. And they don't. So that's dogged their relations. But interesting conversation I observed or heard on NPR this morning was that the challenge is that the European Union is going to come under pressure as a concept. Yeah. If they don't unify in action here, then who are they? Are they all 28 separate countries, the NATO countries, or are they actually unified under the original concept? Don't allow war to happen, make peace happen. Well, here's your acid test right in front of you. And the danger, I think, is both financial and cultural, because the Islamization, if you remember the maniac Anders Breivik, his statement in his manifesto was, they're invading us. If we don't stop them now, it's over. So there are right-wing elements that feel that way. That's the danger. And in the interview I did with Anya Verkamp today from American University in Paris, she made that point. She says, Europeans are under scrutiny and they're under trial right now. What is the European concept? That's important.
What are the chances this is a German power play? I mean, they've been the big dogs in the EU for a while.
Well, they just lost the Volkswagen account big time today. Yeah. So any good PR is in their interest. But to give them credit where credit is due, they've always been the financial and industrial leaders of Europe, and they're expected to fill that role. And if you take out some of their more inglorious episodes in the past, their imperial past, if you look at them, they truly are setting the example. They have the powerhouse economy. But I think there's something else here. I think that they're showing the rest of the EU members what's possible. That's a challenge. They're saying, come on, you guys are living a good life. Share. Share is the big word here. And I think it's a practical matter, it's a political matter, but it's also a moral matter. And that's where the rubber meets the road.
It also seems to be a fairly direct, not threat, but a fairly direct look at the United States, saying, if we can do this, you can do this. And I'm going to be very, very curious to see not only how the Obama administration, I mean, Obama's coming to the end of his presidency. This is sort of an idea or a situation where he could sort of politically consequence-free say,
he could ride the lame duck, come out pretty value-free.
And he's been doing, doing that.
He's good at it.
He's good at it. He's taking advantage of the lame duck role. So, I mean, I guess it's a fairly simple question. Where do you see the United States acting?
Well, they're trying to stay aloof.
Yeah.
They're trying to cover themselves in the security blanket.
Yeah.
We can't deal with this because it's a threat to our security. Well, there's nothing like having a terrorist at your airport. That's direct security problem. So, you know, you can't make the claim that we can manage this from Washington. I don't think that's going to fly anymore. And Obama is not the audience here. The audience is the next American president. Because if you've got, de facto, he's got the golf course here. He's not going to really be doing that much. He's doing legacy work and this, that, and the other, and trying to pave the way for another Democratic administration. But beyond that, how much new ground does he want to break?
Yeah.
Well, according to his own rhetoric, I'm still the president, I want to make this happen, that, other, and that's great. But the real audience here is who is going to run the United States.
Yeah. I mean, this election is going to be pivotal for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
The immigration issue, both domestically.
Nobody can run from this hurricane.
Yeah.
It's sweeping everybody into the vortex.
It's definitely coming, and it's going to be very, very exciting to see how this ends up.
And we're under somewhat of a moral mandate here
Mm-hmm.
also. Hey, we're the beacon on the hill, right?
We're under, you could say, a
The
moral
nation of
historical.
immigrants. Yeah, so stand up to your rhetoric. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Terry, for doing this again. We always have fun, enjoy these chats. Hope you do too as well. Again, be sure to check out this video, our past newscasts, and all the scholarly articles and reviews and things we have up on the SimmonsReview.com. Really interesting stuff and well worth a read or a watch. Hope you enjoy it. Again, my name is Evan Ferch, Dr. Terry Simmons from the SimmonsReview.com. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks
tonight.
for watching.